What is up, everybody? Mark on the mic, joined by my good friend, as per very often / usual, Mr. Ryan Muckenhirn.
Buongiorno.
Ryan, you're a big-time forager.
Yeah.
You talk about it a lot. You do it a lot. It's one of your favorite things to do, spring or fall. I think you fancy yourself somewhat of a mushroom fungus expert. Question for you.
Yeah.
Do you recognize this mushroom?
I don't.
Well, this happens to be the deadliest mushroom in the woods.
That would be Amanita bisporgira, a.k.a. Destroying Angel.
I can't believe you didn't go with me on this.
I'm just kidding, Mark. That's a Remington CORE-LOKT bullet.
It is. This is the ad from 1980.
That's 8 years prior to my minting.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
The old CORE-LOKT has been putting in work for a real long time.
Yeah, it's older than that, though.
Oh, yeah, this is an advertisement. I got the date here, 1939.
My Lord.
In this article, which I don't disagree with this statement. 1939 was the year Remington would change hunting history with the introduction of the CORE-LOKT. I think there's some truth to that.
Oh, yeah. I sold a lot of these green boxes.
So, growing up,
Yeah.
when I started big game hunting, my grandfather shot CORE-LOKTs. My dad shot CORE-LOKTs. And, of course, my brother and I shot CORE-LOKTs. The first handful of deer I ever shot were with a CORE-LOKT.
Yeah.
It seemed to do quite well.
In fact, it still does.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a bolt design that's remained largely unchanged. Now, we've got a very recent iteration of it on the table here as well, kind of an evolution, if you will. But that's incredible. Yeah. Came up with that, and it still works. I mean, we will see, and this bullet will be responsible for many deer killed yet again this fall.
Absolutely.
Deer and elk.
When we
have big game in general.
We have our annual hunter sight in. It's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's November 17th and 18th here at Vortex Optics. Come down to Edge. We'll help you get your gun zeroed. Anyway, lot of boxes of CORE-LOKT come through. Lot of RP head stamps in the brass pile afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I know that is because I'm a shameless brass scrounger. And I always ask the guys I work with, I'm like, do you want your brass? They're like, nope. I'm like, okay. And I just kind of quietly put that in my pocket. That's how I replenish my
Put it in your pocket.
my /6, 243, 270, and sometimes 708. Occasionally you see something interesting like 257 Roberts come through. But that's how I kind of acquiesce some of that more,
The entire hunter sighting event is just an elaborate scheme for you.
Absolutely.
To serve as a veil for your hidden brass scrounging agenda.
Oh yeah. Everybody's like, wow, man, you sign up for that every year. Like
Genius.
You're like, I'm there every night. Yeah, you bet I am.
I'm outside serving hot dogs.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm a man of the people.
Hey,
I like to talk to the folks.
everybody's got their strong points.
Yeah.
Yours is slinging dogs.
Wait a minute.
Mine's slinging lead.
Wait a minute.
So, it is funny, though, because as long as I can remember the green and yellow box and the CORE-LOKT, and actually that phenomenal IP that they have, the deadliest mushroom in the woods, that has been a staple in the cartridge community as long as I've been around. That's 20 years now in the industry. Absolutely fantastic projectile. You and I have shot a fair amount of CORE-LOKTs into various medium to include ballistics, gelatin, steel targets, paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. CORE-LOKTs.
We've got one right here.
That's a 30 caliber CORE-LOKT. Yep.
It does, in fact,
resemble
look like a mushroom.
Look at the picture that you have and look at the bullet that you have. It's like Mr. Rogers' picture.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Whoever wrote that headline, it is, in fact, in my entire life, not category exclusive to projectiles.
Yeah.
I've carried that with me you know how they talk about impressions? Took one impression.
Yeah.
And I've remembered that forever.
Can I just derail for a moment?
Please.
What can you tell me about the banjo minnow?
They have to bite it. They are genetically predisposed.
To strike.
They have to bite it.
I get it.
Works on everything, too.
It does.
Banjo Minnow infomercial came out during a time period where, like, hunting and fishing content, not much of it.
Infancy.
Like, if you caught a hunting or fishing TV show on TV, it was like, buckle up, sit down, we found it, everybody. Do you know how many times I watched the Banjo Minnow commercial just because it was fishing television, if you will?
Every Sunday.
And I knew that it was, like, fake
At 10
in a
o'clock.
way.
I didn't know it was fake. Mark.
Okay, no, it's not fake, but it wasn't like, we're out here on this lake, and we're, like, it was a commercial.
They were in an aquarium. Fishing starved bass.
But I will say, and we've said it before, I look at that bait, the way it works. I've never fished one. I know you did at one time. I mean, it moves like a swim bait. It falls like a Senko. It's got a lot of good stuff. It appears to me.
I caught a fish on it.
I know.
In front of my father. He was irate.
He was upset with you.
He was so mad. I begged him for the banjo minnow. Like years. No. He said, it doesn't work. No. Then we were at Shopko. I was with Mom. I was helping push the cart. There it was. Like the 118-piece set. As seen on TV. Big banner there. Mom, please. This could be like my birthday present. Easter. Christmas. Fine. Don't tell your father. Separate transaction.
Wow.
Cash. No trail. I smuggled it to...
Family secrets.
Yeah. I smuggled it to the Boundary Waters canoe area, to the Gunflint Lodge, ran down to the dock.
You got it across the border.
No, we're still on the Minnesota side. I hid it underneath like my socks so that the old man would see it. And then we get there and like I'm being like extra helpful, get camp set up. Yeah, okay, good to go. Can I go fishing? Yeah, sure, whatever. Grab my poles, like tuck it under my shirt and like head to the docks immediately. Because I know there's always like a bunch of smallies hanging out underneath that dock. And like while we're driving up there, I'm rigging up the various anchor points that you can use. It was a whole thing. They had weights, internal, external, whole ordeal.
A lot of stuff there, yeah.
I get down to the dock, and my old man is in tow. And like there's nothing I can do. And he saw it, and he's just the betrayal. And I pitched it out there and just smoked monster smallmouth. One of my PB smallmouths was on a banjo minnow.
I mean, I believe it.
Guess how many fish I caught after that?
Did you fish it a lot after that?
As long as I could until the bait's completely degraded.
And then that was it, huh?
That was it.
Son of a bee sting.
First pitch.
First cast.
Banjo minnow.
Boy, whatever the day is,
yeah,
a fish on the first cast.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're so stoked on it, but sometimes it's the kiss of death.
It was the white with rainbow sparkled ones.
Fair enough.
Anyway.
Should we talk about the Remington CORE-LOKT?
Remington CORE-LOKT. This is a novel bullet design, especially considering its time when it came out. So prior to the introduction of bullets like the CORE-LOKT, and then just a little bit later, the Nosler partition, where we really started looking at like how a bullet is built. And we'll to pull a term from the fellows over at Barnes that they say a lot, how that bullet was engineered
right
to perform, and specifically to control its chaos while it's passing through any medium, whether that's tissue or they weren't using gel back then. This is a significant design, and when we step back maybe a decade prior to its inception, Spitzer bullets, or the conventional pointed bullet, was actually relatively new. Otherwise, round noses, even in cartridges that wouldn't necessarily dictate a round nose projectile by modern standards. I'll pull one here, 3003, the parent of the 30-06 round nose. The transition to a Spitzer bullet, pointed, conventional shape, as we understand it today, was very new. The jacket and core material, if it was an expanding design, it was a thin jacket and soft lead core.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the challenges that sportsmen and women field ran into was upon contact with, say, bone or heavy tissue, hide, etc. So I want you to think, elk, large deer, moose, bears. A lot of times they'd find that bullet goes into a total state of failure on impact, where the mechanical integrity is absolutely lost. And you end up with shallow penetration, erratic penetration path, or you get nothing. And that bullet stays, it like collapses the nose cone a little bit and turns itself into effectively a full metal jacket. Full pass through, no damage, no points awarded. The CORE-LOKT design is at the time, I'm sure, earth shattering. When you look at it now, we're like, well, yeah, that's how it's done.
Right.
Because it sets such a precedence around the perimeter of the bullet, about halfway up the shank, just below the ogive. There is just very simply a mechanical push inward of the jacket material. And it's crunching into the soft lead core. So that when it hits, you have the nose cone of the bullet crumbling, breaking away and peeling back, as we're accustomed to, as evident in this physical example here. It hits that point, which is not a partition, just, I don't know what I would call it, just a groove effectively pressed in. It hits that point and it's locked in place, thus the name.
Mm-hmm.
The core and the jacket do not easily separate, and you maintain a considerable amount of mass rear of that point and overall structural integrity.
And, very solid, not solid, that's not the right word because it's not a solid, but the expansion diameter is often impressive.
And predictable. Which is really the important part. And this is something that every time I use a new cartridge or I put together a new load and I get the opportunity to push it through a critter, the thing I appreciate the most is the predictability of that projectile. The older I get and the more I do it, the more I realize I have relatively few opportunities to actually go. And the last thing I want is a question in my mind about the bullet's behavior. So when we get to this point as hunters and shooters with the inception of the CORE-LOKT, we gain predictability points. We know that bullet is going to do that thing, so long as we're kept within the bounds of physics, right? So yeah, and they really are a handsome bullet. They really do mess things up in a positive light.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the beginning of getting, like you said, reliable expansion, structural integrity, and penetration all in one.
Yep.
All in one deadly mushroom package.
Yes.
In my readings, it says it's got a tapered jacket. I'm going to read what this article, this is actually from an American Hunter article. It says, tapering the jacket and creating an hourglass-shaped internal cavity, that's that crimp that you're talking about, accomplishes this lock, and as the bullet deforms or crushes during penetration, the front of the jacket and the core peel back and erode. The tapered jacket stops deformation, and you have the original controlled expansion bullet. So everything you just said, but do you know what he's describing by the tapered jacket part?
So what?
I'm assuming, can I make a prediction? A little bit thinner up front and then
exactly correct, thicker
towards where this happens.
Yes. What we should have here is a whiteboard so that I can illustrate. I'm a really good illustrator, Mark. Mm-hmm. So if you were to cross-section that bullet, so cut it in half lengthwise so that we can see or have an examination of what the internal structure is. As Mark had stated, starting at the nose of the bullet, the very tip, the jacket is thin. And as we go down the ogive into the shank of the bullet, that jacket gets progressively thicker. And when you end up at the shank and base of the bullet, it's at its thickest point.
Right.
Right? So this is the term tapered jacket, right? The hourglass part is, as I had mentioned earlier, right about the midpoint of the shank or just slightly forward of the midpoint of the shank. That taper in that jacket moves inward. It then corresponds with the core also being pushed in and that mechanical lock is in place. The jacket integrity thickening as it goes rearward into the projectile itself from nose back, is as important to the structural integrity recipe as that mechanical lock is, right? So the mechanical lock is paramount. To have that feature in there prevents that.
That's kind of the stopping point, right?
Stopping point, but also, and this is something that we've observed before with other projectiles. I'm looking back here at our smattering of projectiles. When you observe a core jacket separation, it is as if the jacket, well, it is exactly as implied. The core and the jacket come apart.
Okay, right.
So you're usually left with a very light fragment of copper that has like a defined cup to it. You can see the bottom of where the bullet's internal base would be. And then you have the core in whatever form or shape it's in. That mechanical part that's locking that in is, of course, preventing that core from moving forward. The thickening of the jacket is slowing that expansion down as best it can. Because that copper, remember, that's a hard material. It moves back, it moves back, it moves back, and it gets progressively more difficult for that bullet to rip apart. Hits that lock point, and that's usually where they stop, at that thick embossment in the jacket material itself. And so we end up with this perfect mushroom.
Now, you were talking about round nose. I've seen CORE-LOKTs, round nose CORE-LOKTs as
absolutely.
Well. And then one that I know a little less about is the
CORE-LOKT tipped.
New iteration, the CORE-LOKT tipped.
Yep. So there's a number of CORE-LOKTs that we don't have pictured here. So there's CORE-LOKT copper, there's CORE-LOKT ultra bonded, and we have CORE-LOKT tipped and CORE-LOKT standard with a PSP, pointed soft point. We don't have an SPRN, soft point round nose, or RNSP.
Right.
They're still out there. There's way less of the round nose offerings than there was, say, 30 years ago. And whether that's because the shooting public feels that the round nose bullet is uninspiring, which is sometimes true, and they find themselves gravitating towards the more aerodynamic profile, which is also a benefit. It just depends what you're doing with it. Or if we look at the number of cartridges that are out there that would benefit from having a round nose design now, that's diminished considerably. So at a time, that was a really, really slick way to go. Cartridges that are still going to have it are going to be like 30-30 Winchester, 32 Winchester Special, where they're defined, more round nose, obviously projectile, sometimes even a flat point to prevent chain firing in a tube-fed gun. But we have an example of like the traditional Spitzer in this case with the lead tip. The tipped variant is a modern adaptation, I believe, to help appeal to consumers who see a Delrin or plastic tip on a bullet and be like, that's what a guy needs. You can't kill anything with an exposed lead bullet. And also to give you a defined ballistic advantage if you're looking to move that bullet out further than, say, 200 or 300 yards.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When I look at the tipped version, what I do like about it, to me, a little more consistency.
Yep. And
also throughout carrying shells a season, in and out of a magazine, maybe in and out of the pipe, the exposed lead tip.
Gets a little worn.
Gets a little worn, a little deformed.
Mm-hmm.
So,
when I was a youngster, my first deer hunt, I did not see a deer the whole time that we were there. I think we were there for 5 days.
Most of my initial deer hunts were very much that, yes.
And as I sat in the stand, bored out of my gourd, I did see a bear. The lead tip on the ammunition that I had with me, of which I brought a considerable sum of ammunition, as one does, for fear of running out. I learned that you could use them as a pencil.
Ryan.
Well, it's true.
Well, yeah, but I just talked about deforming the tip. You've just removed mass from that bullet.
This is at nearly a molecular level, so it's really inconsequential. I also thought to myself, hey, this would be a good opportunity to sharpen the tip. So with my giant buck standard, I made it more pointy. And then I made a couple that were just completely flat, and then even one that was like a modified hollow point. There is nothing wrong with a lead tip exposed bullet.
No.
Some people might find them unsightly, wildly functional. The best shot I've ever seen taken on a game animal from a distance perspective and from a like a challenging position perspective was my hunting partner. It was a white-tailed buck in South Dakota. It was 572 yards, and it was with a standard lead core bullet out of a Winchester Model 70 270 classic stainless. Absolutely slam dunked that deer. Slam dunked him. And by golly, that bullet made it there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That plastic tip, though, to your point, considerably more consistent, and then you do reap an aerodynamic benefit. These two would really be the only CORE-LOKTs, and we can kind of argue even against CORE-LOKT tip, that are actually CORE-LOKTs by design.
So that's what I was going to ask, that CORE-LOKT bonded.
Yep.
What is that, just maintaining the CORE-LOKT name because it was so popular and people have grown to like it and trust it, and it was like, hey, we'll make a CORE-LOKT bonded, even though, or does it have that crimp as part of it?
I'd have to cross section one. My assumption is no. Let's look it up.
I'm going to look into that.
Yeah, we'll talk about the CORE-LOKT copper too, though. So the CORE-LOKT copper is an all copper projectile. It's relatively new on the scene, and it is, of course, there is no core.
Right.
So we have this very well established name. We have, of course, brand and name recognition with the CORE-LOKT line. We might as well call it the CORE-LOKT copper. There's no core to lock, though.
Maybe it fits within a kind of a price bracket, if you will, perhaps. Sure. I don't know.
Yeah, perhaps. The CORE-LOKT ammo, that's a good point, Mark, is generally speaking pretty darn affordable, which has been, I think, a really, really important thing for shooters for as long as I've been around, right? So you have premium ammunition components, whether that's, like Remington is a variant called Premier, right? So they have Premier shotgun, Premier handgun, Premier rifle. Double to potentially triple the cost for the ammunition. And we're using like super spectacular premium components. So best grade brass, best grade powders, best grade primers in that Premier list. You're looking at bullets like the Swift Scirocco, which is, an ultra premium projectile, quite costly. CORE-LOKT has always been a budget-oriented ammunition, which I really actually quite appreciate. A fun thing that happens a lot of times, bullets like this, and this is something we've mentioned before, are typically very lenient and forgiving. And it seems as if the guns that are prone to pickiness will often shoot these very well. I'm reminded of a story. Mark had a customer that had 2 Browning X bolts that he was getting ready for. Either he was in Alaska and coming to the lower 48, or was from the lower 48 and going to Alaska. Can't remember. 2 Browning X bolts would not shoot. Very poor accuracy. I get them in. He actually sends them in here to try to get this going. And I start working on these guns.
Well, and I'd procured about 5 different kinds of ammunition for these rifles.
And then I did the same. I went to a local retailer. I bought every box of 300 Win Mag that they had, a sampling of. And off we go, and I'm shooting these ultra premium, like things you would think you need to buy to pull off some sort of large, big grandiose hunt. And I was experiencing poor to abysmal accuracy with some of these loadings, and some of these are approaching $100 a box.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had Remington CORE-LOKT, Hornady American Whitetail, and Federal Power Shock. Mm-hmm. So we're talking between $17.99 at the time and $23.99. So like dig through your cup holder for change box of ammo price. All 3 of those were like sub MOA.
Right.
And how do you argue with it?
And all 3, I'd say, when you're, at least for what I'm primarily looking to get out of a bullet, they're going to expand at close distances. They're going to expand well at extended ranges. Like, they're very forgiving at least out of these rifles, they're very forgiving to shoot, but they're also forgiving as far as their performance window.
Yeah. And so he went on to, I believe, kill whatever he was chasing.
I think he was going on an elk hunt, and killed an elk that fall and got him.
Yep. With that standard projectile.
Big old 6-point.
Yeah.
I can't remember how far it was. Because I know we were working on some ballistic.
Either way, so we have this question coming quite a bit. We'll have customers who, listen to the podcast and kind of know that we goof around with a lot of ammunition and rifles. And they're like, hey, here's my problem. It's like, got this optic, got this rifle, things are good. It's not shooting great. And I'm trying to use this whiz-bang, high BC, ultra sleek, low drag, mastodon level projectile. It's abysmal. It's like, have you tried a box of Remington CORE-LOKTs?
Sometimes going back to basics is not a bad thing.
And a lot of them, there's like a pause and they're like, really? And it's like, give them a go. Because remember, the ammunition that shoots out of your gun best is the best ammunition. And again, I'd have zero hesitations taking a bullet like the CORE-LOKT on a hunt. It just works.
No.
It just plain works. Like, do I have preferences to others? Sure, for other reasons. But if it comes down to it, it's like I need reliability, functionality, and effectiveness. I know what I'm getting. It's predictable.
I mean, talk about a history of performance.
We do have CORE-LOKT copper.
Oh yeah, there's one.
Yep. Same motif on the box, right? This is readily identifiable. It says right on it, CORE-LOKT copper. No core, nothing to lock.
I hope they never do a kind of a complete redesign where they lose the green and yellow.
Yeah, that's not good. No.
It would that would hurt my heart.
Even this CORE-LOKT tip box is little racy.
Little fancy.
Yep, little racy.
Yep. I was thinking the same thing.
The number of boxes of these things. I have a case of 150 grain CORE-LOKT 308s.
A case?
A case. That I had. This is like a just-in-case case for hunting ammo.
Yeah.
And because it shoots famously out of my 308s. And it's like, we just set that aside. If the time comes where I'm in a pickle and I can't, it's great. And you open that thing up, and what I love about them is just the very 1980.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything you need and nothing else, right? Boom, there it is. I love that.
That's all I got on this thing.
Remington CORE-LOKT. I'd love to know if anybody's ever taken just an absolutely categorically giant critter with a CORE-LOKT. And if you
guaranteed,
well, I know, but
guaranteed
to the listening public here, if you've got a trophy to you or trophy to the book standards,
yes.
Critter with a CORE-LOKT, I want to see it.
I mean, I would speculate. I don't know. But, we're talking 1939 on. I mean, at that time, adventure hunters who are, booking brown bear hunts on Kodiak, I would assume they were probably using CORE-LOKTs. I don't know.
Absolutely. Unless they were hunting a safari-level cartridge that, maybe this wasn't offered in at the time. But, yeah, phenomenal.
Cool, man.
CORE-LOKT.
Cool.
Deadliest mushroom in the woods.
It is. It is indeed. Well, thank you, Ryan. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Like Ryan said, have you shot something absolutely massive with a CORE-LOKT? Have you shot it in the past? Are you still shooting it because, hey, go with what you know and it's still working famously? Let us know. I want to hear about it.
Absolutely.
If you kill a buck with your CORE-LOKT this year, let us know. Want to hear about that too? Shoot us a message.
Yeah.
So, cool. All right. Well, thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Happy hunting and shooting. We'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.
Bye.